Someone on the Texas fishing forum asked a very good question about how do you prevent bluegill from swallowing the hook, and this applies to just about any fish, but particularly bluegill. Remember in the other video when I was explaining circle hooks, remember circle hooks work on a camshaft. I'm not advocating circle hooks for bluegill because it doesn't work, but just for comparison, for the hook series, a circle hook hits that and it cams around. A circle hook is really a cam hook. It takes linear force and turn it into turning force, just like the camshaft in your car. Again, in focus, circle hook hits something and it pivots around like a camshaft. Compare that to a J hook. This is a sprout hook 3366 Mustad. You take that same situation, bam, it just sticks, it just pokes straight in. There is no camming, although there is. It does, but it's not designed to work. It's designed to just penetrate on anything that touches that point, right? Now the sprout hook, the limerick hook, or the two hooks, they're really the perfected version. That angle there is very important. Well, the first thing is to crush the barb of the hook. You know, if you're catching and releasing, take you some pliers and just crush the barb of the hook. Okay. That's the first thing you do. That's going to limit the amount of damage the hook does to the fish. Doesn't tear the fish up so badly. You can dislodge the hook a lot easier. Two, if the bluegill does bite the hook, and I am catching and releasing, I'll generally just cut the line and just let the fish take its chances out there in the water, hoping that that hook will rust out. They may live, they may not. If they don't live, you know that another fish will eat it and it won't go to waste. If they do live, then hooray. That's one of the reasons why I like using these bronze hooks, because you know they'll rust and corrode easily in the water. The other thing is the hook set and the timing on the hook set. There's a lot of great. I'd encourage you to go to the Texas fishing forum and look at a lot of the comments that guys have posted on the bluegill forum there. And yeah, I mean, your hook set has to be quick enough, because that bluegill will take that bait and eventually swallow it because it's food. But if you set that hook fast enough, you will get the hook in the mouth. Now, you've seen me fish for bluegill by drifting and trolling. By definition, they don't have enough time to swallow it, and it almost always is in their mouth. That's another thing. Consider switching to drifting if you can, depending on the waters you fish. Consider drifting and trolling for bluegill instead of sitting and anchoring and like that. I've caught far more bluegill by drifting down the river than I ever have by just sitting in one spot and hoping that they're there. Another thing is, if you are sitting and anchoring, experiment with the timing on your hook set. You know, set the hook a little bit faster. I generally have found that the fish, when I'm sitting and catching from the bank, that the fish are gonna grab the bait and then they'll start swimming off with it. They're not just pecking at it. I've seen them. They'll grab it, and then they'll swim off with it, and then they'll let it go and come back and get it again. A lot of times what bluegill will do is hit the bait and attack the bait just to try to kill it, and they'll circle back around and come take it. So while I'm not, you know, a lot of people say, oh, the moment you feel a little tap, set the hook. No, I find that all you're doing is taking the bait away from them. There is a timing, and it depends on the day. Sometimes they are voracious and hitting it hard, and you just take it and you set as soon as you do that. But I find most of the time, if I do that, I just miss the fish. I find that they hit it, then they'll come back they'll swim back around, take it, and start swimming off. And once that happens, I'll set the hook there. You got to know what they're doing. That's one of the reasons why bobber fishing is a good way to start with bluegill, because you can see, especially the long, narrow bobbers that I make, you can see what they're doing and how they're interacting with the bait, and that teaches you how to set the hook. Then you just throw away the bobber and go tight lining. Yeah, well, you'll know better. And generally, when I'm drifting for bluegill, I don't have to set the hook. The fact that you've got 500 pounds worth of boat moving this way and the fish is coming at it from whatever angle, They don't have time to sit there and play with it, and they don't have time to hit it and try to kill it. They just gotta, it's moving away from them. They just have to attack it and assault it, and they just hit it. They just hit it, and because it's always moving forward, they're just always hooked, right? I fish for bluegill exclusively for bait now, so I'm basically fishing for keeps. I don't ever worry about it, so I generally don't crush the barb. I'm not, unless I'm fishing in a pond where it's catch and release only or something, there's just no need. Another thing would be, a lot of fellas mention that vary the hook size. Now for me, I use one hook size for bluegill. That's a number 8 Mustad 3366 hook, and I don't use anything else, because you got to remember, I'm a fly tyer. So I'm tying flies on these hooks. I'm using these hooks for live bait. I'm using these hooks for dead bait. I'm using these hooks for lures and flies and harnesses and things. So the hook is big enough to put all that stuff on it, yet still small enough for the bluegill to eat it. And number 8 is the biggest hook I use. You got to understand, I come at this from more of a fly fishing perspective. So number 8s, number 10s, and number 12s are the kinds of hooks I generally would be using for bluegill. But I found that the number 8 catches me the greatest number of fish without the fish swallowing in my waters, according to the methods I use, especially if I'm tying an Afro puff and then putting a night crawler on it and then drifting it and trolling it. If I go down to number 10, there won't be enough room on the hook for the night crawler and the fly or the lure or the harness that I'm going to tie on it. You end up covering the hook and burying the point of the hook, which is not good, and I don't catch as many fish. So a number 8 hook is what I bumped it up to, right? If I were doing purely flies or purely live bait, I'd just bump it back down to a number 10 and wouldn't think twice about it. But if I only had one bluegill hook for the rest of my life, it'd be a number 8 Mustad 3366. That's what I buy. That's what I use. And it's big enough of a hook that I've landed some. You saw me land the big bass on the last trip, right? So, and that's trolling now. We're drifting this shoreline. Number 8 hook. We saw him, cane pole to hook him, and we hand lined him in. It works. So the way you prevent fish from swallowing the hook is, one, help the fish out by crushing the barb, so it's a little easier to dislodge, even if it's not swallowed it, but a little bit deeper than in their mouth. A barbless hook is easier to degouge. 2, vary the sizes of your hook depending on the size of the species and specimens that you're catching, and also consider your presentation. Consider drifting for bluegill as opposed to just sitting and anchoring. And then the last one is get your timing down. Not too fast, not too slow. You just got to get the timing of the hook set down. And that's how you prevent fish from swallowing the J hook. See ya.